is up?
What is up? It's so good to see you. Hope everything's going well.
You're looking like you have a nice suntan, enjoying the post-basketball season. How's it feel?
Oh, it's awesome. You know, you're in the gym for 4, 5, 6 months. Even during a normal year, it can get long, but especially during a COVID year where we didn't have many extracurricular activities. The season didn't end the way we wanted, but then to have some time off, I get to spend some time with my family, my friends. It's been incredible. And to get outside of the gym and be in the sun for a little bit, can't beat it. Can't complain.
I am looking forward to it. I called my dad and I found I was going to have a little bit of time after season, and trip to Florida is booked. I'm going to get that sunshine. We're ready to go. I'm so excited just to be chilling for a little bit, You
need it. Some refresh, reset time.
Exactly.
Good for the body and for the soul. Absolutely.
Exactly. So we're just going to dive right into it. A couple of weeks ago, I was watching this basketball documentary. It's on Netflix. I think it's called The Playbook. I don't know if you've heard about it. But there was a point in there, and it was talking about how pressure is privilege. And so I just kind of want to get your take on that. And like, what do you think that means to you? How do you take that? And how do you think that's kind of played out in your life thus far?
Definitely. I've heard that quote a couple different times. And when I hear the statement, pressure is privilege, it makes you think about that. If you have pressure on you or people are watching you, it ultimately means that other people would love to be in the situation that you're in. So I think about in sports, how a lot of, great teams, that's who the pressure is on. So if you're a top 5 team, they're feeling the pressure. If you have high expectations going into a year, they have the pressure. If you've been playing really well, then the target's on your back, the pressure's on you. If you flip that around, that's also what everyone wants to be. Everyone wants to have the high expectations. Everyone wants to be a top 5 team. Everyone wants to be the player that's playing well. So it's kind of a two-edged sword. And so I think the privilege of pressure is that there's also a lot of opportunity in it, and that you've proven yourself to a certain extent, but there's so much opportunity out there for you yet to continue to strive for.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And it really, to me, like, also it is that opportunity. It's that, like, that effort, that work you put in to get to where you are. And honestly, like, that's like the fun part. Like, it's exhilarating to sometimes have that pressure. And like, I know people can like take it different ways, and especially like growing up, you feel like this pressure. I think I know I kind of felt it a little bit. I wonder if you did too. Just, we both were growing up kind of in the spotlight, going to top 25 programs out of high school. Like, how do you think your idea of pressure has changed from when you were in high school to now?
Yeah, I think every level you go from, well, it doesn't matter what sports you're in, whether it's volleyball, basketball, football, golf, whatever it may be. But when you go from middle school, I remember when I was a little middle schooler and we were in the 8th grade state championship game, I felt so much pressure. And now looking back at it from a college athlete, it's like, oh, that game really wasn't that big of a deal. There was 50 people there. It was just really our parents in the stands. And so I think pressure increases the higher you get and the bigger the stage. So, middle school, 8th grade state championship game, really big deal at the time. Then you get to high school, state tournament, and there's everyone from around the states watching. That's awesome. Then you get to our level in college, and you're in the NCAA tournament and Big Ten tournaments, and you have the whole country, the whole world watching. And so as you continue to climb that ladder of, either success or just bright lights, whatever you want to call it, the pressure kind of continues to mount. So one thing that I think is crucial is to kind of change your perspective on pressure from a young age, because then once you get to this level, it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, that's perspective. I think that's everything. And I have a similar story too. I remember we were playing to go to state with my high school volleyball team, and we ended up losing like a really tight match. And like, it literally felt like the world was crashing down. Like, I was so distraught about it. And then like, you fast forward 4 years and we're in the national championship, and that loss was crushing as well.
Absolutely. And it's so personal. I think that's what makes a big moment a big moment. It's what you talked about earlier. It's the time you put in, the relationships you have with your teammates, all the ups and downs, or I like to call them hills and valleys, that leads up to those big moments. That's what creates, a memorable moment. Is everything. Yeah, the moment is great, but it's everything that builds into it. You talk about a national championship game, whether you win or lose, there's gonna be so many emotions because of everything you've put into it along the way.
Yeah. 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 It's crazy to like look back at that stuff too and just like absorb it and reflect on it. And like, that's just how I think we all like become better people and like fiercer competitors.
Absolutely. It helps you gain perspective. You always say like 2020 hindsight vision. When you look back, there's all sorts of things you would change, and you understand and you see the way that things intertwine and work together for your good. But when you get the time to actually sit back and reflect and take a look at the whole journey, that's where that perspective comes from.
Right.
And you can learn from that perspective and gain wisdom from that perspective and then continue forward.
Right. No,
it's pretty awesome.
And yeah, like I also think that like kind of in the environment that we're in as like high profile collegiate athletes, like I don't think people like realize like how much pressure we do put on ourselves as well to perform. Like after bad games or even after like good games, reflecting on those moments, it can be a lot at times, and it can really like build you up or tear you down. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. The pressure to perform is really, I think, an identity struggle that most athletes deal with. Trying to perform for the approval of others, or for, praise, or for fame, or just to win games. They might not even be for, things that are bad, but at the same time, that desire to perform, it puts such a burden on everything that you do. Because at the end of the day, you could play the best game of your career, but it's not going to be perfect, because we play in a sport and we live in a world that isn't perfect, and people make mistakes and things don't go your way. And so if you strictly see your sport through a lens or a perspective as your chance to perform, you're always going to be left unfulfilled, because you're never going to necessarily grasp that perfection. Especially in our sports, you can't do it.
No, not even close. And that, for me, I found is like a very long journey that you have to really reflect on and work through, because you really just have to live through that process. It's not going to come overnight. I guess, do you mind talking a little bit about like how you kind of got to that point of just like, I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of what I'm trying to say. Got to the point of just like kind of
being able to live in the moment,
make
the most of the moment.
That's the word. Blocking out the noise.
There you go.
Being confident in who you are. Sorry, wow, that took a second.
I love it. No, yeah, absolutely. And I know, Dana, we've gotten to know each other really well over the last 4 years.
Yeah.
But my faith is extremely important to me, and the foundation of what I build my life on, and ultimately where I find my identity. And so one thing that sport, and basketball specifically, has taught me over the years is that my identity cannot be found strictly as a basketball player. Otherwise, I will always feel a low sense of self-worth and self-value, because I can never attain what I want to attain through my sport. And so for me, where I find my confidence is in the Word of God and what He says about me. And He tells that I am who I am and who He says I am, and not what I do. And so before I was a basketball player, before I went to the University of Wisconsin, before I scored 20 points, before I did any or achieved anything, He told me that I was loved, and that I was His craftsmanship and His handiwork, and ultimately a son of God. And so when I find my confidence from something that's unconditional, like the Word of God, instead of something that's conditional, very much so like a sport, it gives me a sense of peace, to where I don't have to go out there under the pressure to perform, but more just the freedom to play free and worship and play with passion. And so for me, that's something that's I found a lot of pride and peace in over the last few years, is going out and playing with this sense of identity that I am loved and I'm worthy regardless of how I perform. And so that's kind of how I take the pressure off of always trying to perform to the best of my ability, even though I want to, giving myself some grace in that area of my life.
Right. No, and everyone deserves that. I mean, we're not perfect. People really, really do think that sometimes that collegiate athletes are perfect, and just seeing stuff on social media and what the media has to say and what everyone has to say about us, sometimes it can hurt, and it can just be really, I don't know. I don't know if it really hurts confidence, but like it adds to that pressure. But we know that like we can find ways to work through it, and just to become better people, better teammates, better athletes. So yeah, that's
Absolutely.
awesome. Thanks for sharing.
I think that's one thing with social media. I heard a really good quote from different people and mentors in my life as I was going through, and I've actually made the decision. I deleted Twitter, so I got off of social media. I still have Instagram, but I use it sparingly. But when you look at all the highs, all the positive and the praise, but also all the negative and criticism, those are both two things that you cannot control. And so if that's something that you're trying to perform for, it's so conditional. And at the end of the day, it's always going to be 50-50. Some people are going to love you, some people are going to hate you. And the quote that I heard was, never take criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from. And so the way I look at that,
I love
the
that.
people on social media, I'm never going to ask them for advice on how to play
Never.
basketball, on how to live my life, or on what to do. But I will ask my family, my girlfriend, my friends, my coaches, my teammates, the people that truly know you and know your character and know what you're about. They are the individuals in your life that you would go to advice from. So those are the voices, and those are the words, and those are the people that you want to learn from and surround yourself from, and ultimately read into and listen. And so one thing that I decided to do last year during the off season was just get off of Twitter, and limit my ability to see the positives and the negatives, and just really focus on the people that I have in my circle and the opinions and individuals that I think really matter.
I love that. I love that so much. Yeah, no, that's awesome. You said it perfectly. So I guess kind of just going off of that, like there are, struggles obviously that we all face off the court. How do you think that from what you've learned in basketball and just dealing with this, being in your closest circle, talking to the people that you love most, how have they helped you kind of take the pressure off of life off the court?
Absolutely. I think that's one thing that sport does for us, especially this year, in a year that we were kind of cut off from, the real world in a sense, and cut off from a lot of our families and friends. Is sport shows you how important and how invaluable genuine relationships are. Relationships that love you for who you are and not necessarily for what you do. And so that's one thing that basketball has showed me over the years, is that there's a lot of people in your life that really love you for who you are. And they don't love you for how many points you can score, how many kills or blocks you can have in volleyball, but they're concerned about your heart and your soul and with your future and things like that. There's also a lot of people out there that really just love watching you play volleyball, or love watching you play basketball, or hate watching you play basketball. Depends on how you look at it.
Always perspective.
Yeah. And so I think the way that those genuine relationships help me is that they give me perspective on what really matters. And their unconditional love in times of both triumph and tragedy is just what reminds me that there's so much more to life than sport. And there's so much more things in this life that are significant and maybe doesn't have anything to do with being successful. And so I think they give you so much perspective. I know we've gone back to that word a lot, but those genuine relationships go a long ways, especially for student athletes.
Yeah. No, I couldn't have said it better. That was a mic drop right there. I've just, throughout my journey too, I've just realized like how important genuine relationships are, and just being able to be connected and, to have, that's something that I really cherish about our friendship is, we can hang out and not ever talk about sport and just, dive into life. And it's been something that I'm really thankful for about you, and I feel like we help each other grow whenever we do get the chance to hang out. So
Absolutely. I appreciate you, Dana.
well, thank you, Brad. That's really all we got. That was sick.
Sounds good. I love it.